That's why they call me bad company. I can't deny.
All right, welcome to our Week 9 breakdown of the Denver Broncos versus the Oakland Raiders Sunday Night Football, brought to you and sponsored by Raiders401.com. All right, Pirates, so what do we got on the agenda as far as the Denver Broncos coming into O.co Sunday night on Sunday Night Football?
All right, well, welcome aboard, everybody. I'm the Raider Pirate, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at the team leaders on these teams so far, just so we can get a good idea of what we've got coming in. When you take a look at the quarterback matchups, we've got Derek Carr coming in against Trevor Siemian. Derek Carr, 2,321 yards, 17 touchdowns. Trevor Siemian, 1,487 yards, 8 touchdowns. I would say, outside of just the numbers, advantage probably goes to the Raiders. C.J. Anderson just put on injured reserve. It looks like Devontae Booker is going to be their running back. 70 carries, 298 yards, about a 4.3-yard average. Latavius Murray comes in as the Raiders' leading rusher, but he's closely followed by DeAndre Washington. They're splitting the load here. Murray, 69 carries, 279 yards. DeAndre Washington, 52 carries, 267 yards. Combined, they're at about 4.5 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns on the season. So once again, it looks like the advantage may go to the Raiders in terms of the running game. Receiving, Amari Cooper, 52 catches. Michael Crabtree, 47 catches. Cooper, 787 yards, 2 touchdowns. Cooper, 569 yards, 6 touchdowns. When you take a look at Emmanuel Sanders and Denarius Thomas, both very dangerous wide receivers. Sanders, 44 for 567, 3 touchdowns. Denarius, 42 for 535, 4 touchdowns. Once again, I think here the clear advantage goes to the Oakland Raiders in terms of personnel, offensive against offensive. If you look at the offensive comparisons here, total yards per game for the Broncos, 326.4, 401.6 for the Raiders coming off that big win against the Bucs. Passing yards, 285 yards per game, 221 for the Broncos. And then if you take a look, 116 yards per game for the Raiders, rushing 104.8. So offense to offense, clearly I think the advantage goes to the Raiders. But that's not the matchup that we're probably going to talk about. We'll probably be talking about offense versus defense. Your thoughts?
That is my key to the game, is this Raiders offense versus the Denver Broncos defense. Now, we know that they play fast. They got a very solid defense. They're really good on the outside. Their secondary is really strong, and they got great pass rushers on the edges. So they'll be able to set the edge and contain the outside. We like to throw to the sidelines. You know, they got Talib, they got Chris Harris. We got to be aggressive, but I think we need to be aggressive in the middle of the field. We need to utilize our tight ends. We need to use our running backs on wheel routes coming out of the backfield, and we need to use slants with Amari Cooper. We saw them really shine last week against Tampa Bay using Amari Cooper on the slant route. I think this is one of the keys to the games. This is the way that we need to attack this Denver Broncos defense, and as long as we be a little bit more aggressive in the middle of the field, I think that's what's going to give us the advantage heading into the fourth quarter of this matchup.
Yeah, and if you take a look at it, interestingly enough, you've got an offense. You've got Gary Kubiak, who's sort of an offensive genius, going against Jack Del Rio, who is a defensive-minded coach. You got a horrible offense coming in, playing against a not-so-good defense. They're getting better, folks. They are getting better. They're doing much better against the run. But is that the product of having played 2 Jacksonville teams that have struggled against the run, or is this team actually getting better? And I think they're going to be getting a lot better in the weeks coming up when you start getting players back. Potentially Aldon Smith, Mario Edwards Jr. coming back. But for this particular game, they have got to be sound against the run. They must seal the edges. Again, you can't ask for anything better with Anderson being out. He's a punishing rusher. But again, you got another big, strong punishing rusher in Booker. They've got to come up big, in my opinion. You've got to be able to shut down the run. I think Derek Carr, having seen this defense a couple of times in his young career, he understands what he can and he can't do. He's beginning to come out of his shell a little bit. I think they're going to play this kind of bend but don't break offense. I know we don't hear that very much, but it's sort of just keep on jabbing, throwing things out here like we talked about in the first segment, and wait for something big to happen. If this offensive line can do even a yeoman's job here of protecting Derek Carr, I think the Raiders are going to be able to pull this game out. Look, we talked about the Kansas City Chiefs being the big game. They were coming to the black hole. That was not the big game, folks. Sunday night in O.co. It's going down for real. I believe this team comes out. They laid an egg when they had an opportunity to take this division with a stranglehold. I believe they come out, and I believe they win this football game, and they go to first place in the AFC West.
And one of the other keys to make that happen defensively for the Oakland Raiders is they got to make sure that they make the Denver Broncos one-dimensional on offense. Like you said, they need to shut down Devontae Booker. They need to make sure that they're setting the edge, pushing him into the inside, and our big tackles are going to have to make plays, as well as our linebackers, Corey James and Riley Jr. These guys need to hit the gaps, really contain the run. Once they do that, that's going to put the ball in Simeon's hands. And this is where we need to see Khalil Mack and Bruce Irvin really come alive and get to Trevor Siemian and make him uncomfortable. As long as they could set the edges, contain the run, and make Trevian Siemian uncomfortable throughout this game, I think the Raiders defense could be improving like we've seen the last 2 weeks, and this is going to set the tone to make this what would be considered a shootout. But with the Denver Broncos defense so strong, it just gives the Raiders the advantage with the ability that Derek Carr has to really turn it up a notch in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, the only thing I see being a real problem, like you were talking about, they've got to get the ball into Simeon's hands. But the thing that I worry about the most are the bootlegs, coming back across the middle of the field, the tight ends catching balls, Virgil Green, some of these guys being able to catch balls and cut across. That hurt us big time in the Atlanta game. That also hurt us in the Chiefs game. Andy Reid basically went in there and changed up their game plan and said, hey, let's go back and let's do a little bit more of what Atlanta did against the Raiders. So if we can fix that problem, if we can make sure, and they haven't been able to get their tight ends involved in the game that much. I'm talking about Denver. And they do have a good one. Virgil Green is a good one. But the bottom line is this is the type of offense that we have trouble against. This is not a quarterback that stands back there. A running game that comes and pounds directly or tries to get to the outside. They've got tight ends that could come across the middle. This is the Shanahan offense that basically they did that Mike Shanahan's son is using in Atlanta, and that Kubiak is basically using. So once again, the priority here is going to be to stop those outside runs, make sure that we can contain those edges. And like the Knight said, if we can do that, that's going to force them to have to throw the ball. If we know where they're going and we can be stout and we can maintain the areas of the field that we should, I think we can shut down this attack, and that means that the offense is going to have to produce. So once again, I feel really good offensively that we can do this, utilize more of our running backs and tight ends like Atlanta did against the Broncos. It's funny that we're talking, both teams are going to be looking at Atlanta and saying, well, what did they do? How did they do it? So if we can learn from those mistakes, which I think we are, I think as a team we're learning from those mistakes, I think we have a fantastic chance. And again, I believe that the Raiders pull this game out and take first place in the AFC West.
And let's take a look at this real quick, guys. This is going to be the first game of the second half of the season. And to me, on record, on this whole schedule, the whole NFL, this is probably going to be the best game played thus far. You've got 2 6-2 teams out of the AFC West on national television, Sunday Night Football. These are two of the best teams in the AFC, let alone the AFC West. It's going to be a slobber knocker. You got the Denver Broncos defense versus the Oakland Raiders offense. You got Derek Carr trying to improve on what he did last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where he set career highs for himself. You got Amari Cooper, who set career highs for himself, going up against guys like Aqib Talib, Chris Harris, TJ Ward. TJ Ward's already been on record to say that they're good wide receivers. They're not great wide receivers. So the hype is already getting built up. This is going to be a matchup of the ages, probably the best matchup thus far in the National Football League. And it's really going to set the tone for the rest of the season because all the cards are on the table. Whoever wins this game is going to be top of the AFC West and in control of their own destiny moving forward. So this is going to be a playoff atmosphere. It's going to be really intense. It's national television. It's Sunday Night Football. Derek Carr versus this Denver Bronco defense. I do see the moxie of this football team, the heart of this football team, the no quit. They constantly in a fight. They're constantly doing things to keep themselves in games and win games. That's the reason why we're 6-2. So this ought to be a great game. I got the Raiders pulling this one out. I think maybe they only win by a field goal. I think Janikowski finds a way to redeem himself from last week and kick a game winner in the fourth quarter. I say roughly, I think the Denver Broncos defense is good enough to kind of hold us under 30, but I say this could turn out to be a 24-21 victory, Oakland Raiders.
Yeah, and also look at it. The Raiders are a 1-point favorite. They've had trouble. They've struggled at home. This tells you a lot, folks. Most times the odds makers are going to give you 3 points just because you're playing at home. The Raiders have struggled mightily at home. There is no home field advantage. So clearly the odds makers in Vegas are thinking that we're good enough to be at least a 4-point favorite at this point. If they're giving us that +1, they really should be giving the Broncos +2 at this point, negating the home field advantage because we don't seem to have any. Like you said, I think this is the beginning of something different. We've put together a 3-game winning streak. We've put together a 2-game winning streak. We've won on the East Coast. We're 5-0 on the road. We're heading into the second part of the season. I think Jack Del Rio gets it right this week. This is the real game. They blew it. They understand they blew it against the Kansas City Chiefs. They're not going to make the same mistake again. Raiders, I think, big in this game. I think, and again, folks, big for the Denver Broncos is 10 points, right? It's a 10-point game. But I think the Raiders win by 10 points Sunday night.
All right. We want to thank you guys for tuning in. We wanted to make sure that you guys follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, all at The Will to Win. You could also find us on or you can email us any questions and concerns at thew2w@gmail.com. And we want to remind you, you guys could tune in tomorrow to watch the show. We're going to continue our Denver Bronco Oakland Raider breakdown by bringing in our NFL insider, Louis T. from the Louis T. Network. So make sure you stay tuned for that show. It's really simple. Just hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell next to it to stay up to date to all the videos that we put out on a daily basis. For the Raider Pirate, I am the Oakland Knight, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Stay Raider strong.
And that's why they call me